Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul ukdeten min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu. Inshallah, we will continue with the second station of the 21st world. And I guess last week we studied the first and the second aspects. And inshallah, we will continue with the third aspect.
Third aspect, it is this: there are certain hidden connections between things. There are even the threads of connections between things you least expected. They are either there in fact, or your imagination made them according to the art with which it was preoccupied, and tied them together. It is due to this mystery of connections that sometimes seeing a sacred thing calls to mind a dirty thing. As stated in the science of rhetoric, although opposition is the cause of distance in the outer world, it is the cause of proximity in the imagination. That is, an imaginary connection is the means of bringing together the images of two opposites. The recollection which arises from this connection is called the association of ideas. For example, while performing the prayers or reciting supplications before the Kaaba in the divine presence, this association of ideas takes hold of you and drives you to the furthest, lowest trivia, although you are reflecting on the Quranic verses. If your head is afflicted with association of ideas in this way, beware, do not be alarmed. Rather, the moment you come to your senses, turn back. Do not say, "I've done a great wrong," and keep playing with the trigger, lest through your attention that tenuous connection strengthens. For the more you feel regret, the more importance you give it, and that faint memory of yours becomes ingrained. It becomes an imaginary sickness. Do not be frightened. It is not a sickness of the heart. This sort of recollection is mostly involuntary. Especially in sensitive, nervous people, it is more common. Satan works the mind of this sort of scruple a great deal. The cure for this wound is as follows. The association of ideas is mostly involuntary. One is not answerable for it. In association, there is proximity. There is no touching or intermingling. Therefore, the nature of the ideas do not pass to one another and do not harm one another. Just as Satan and the angel of inspiration, being in proximity to one another around the heart, and sinners and the pious being close to one another in the same house cause no harm, so too, if at the prompting of the association of ideas, dirty imaginings come and enter among clean thoughts, they cause no harm, unless it is intentional, or by imagining them to be harmful, one is overoccupied with them. And sometimes the heart becomes tired, and the mind occupies itself with anything it encounters in order to entertain itself. Then Satan finds an opportunity and scatters dirty things before it and eggs it on.
Okay, so in this 21st word, second station, we have been studying the verse, "And say, O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions of the evil ones. And I seek refuge with you, O my sustainer, lest they should come near me." This was a verse from Quran chapter 23, verse numbers 97 and 98. And in the first and second aspect, we studied different aspects of the scruples or the suggestions of Satan. And now we are studying the third aspect. Yeah, in general, there was a theme. So just I will very quickly go over it. So the theme that we discussed so far was in the introduction paragraph, author was saying that not knowing what it is invites or makes you more vulnerable for such scruples. But if you know what it is, it goes away. So it's important to identify what they are. And last week, I remember we were saying that such suggestions, we should know how to maybe utilize them, not be overwhelmed or overcome by them. So now in the third aspect, the author is talking about hidden connections between things. Anybody wants to share some initial thoughts about that? First from online participants. Or people in here. My initial thoughts about this part is, as author was saying, this is something that happens more with sensitive people. So let's say we are at a discussion environment, let's say, and you see that everybody around you are carefully listening to the discussion, and you are also engaged with the discussion, but at some point you find yourself right at the time that you are discussing a serious topic, you find yourself in the middle of a totally unrelated position, and it makes you nervous. I mean, what a base person I am, that while I am supposed to be thinking about such serious stuff, I cannot even focus on them. So it looks like, at least in that sense, I am a little bit retarded maybe, or there's something wrong with me, and maybe I will not be able to do this job. Maybe this is too much for me, and all sorts of then ideas starts attacking you, or at least, how did I end up with this idea? This sort of a anxiety starts kicking in. But for that, the author is saying that it is because of the hidden connections between things. There is a connection between them, because to me it is like a totally unrelated thing. How did I end up being in here? So I was supposed to be in discussion. I found myself shopping in Burlington. I mean, how did it happen? I'm so sorry. So I was supposed to be thinking about that. So is it that I am becoming like overly consumer? Am I a too bad person? Am I being very extravagant?
Or somebody's affecting you.
Somebody is affecting me. Yeah, this is another option. A bad friend. So anyways, joking aside. So yeah, I mean, these sort of things might be preventive or might put me into despair. So this is my initial thoughts. What do you think? Anybody who is experiencing, yes, go ahead.
One thing, it's starting with the first sentence, which attracted my attention, is the author says there are certain hidden connections between things. And then he gives example, like something really beautiful and then something really dirty. He says there might be even connection, there is even connection between them. This reminds me that even with such opposites, even their coming together, there's a meaning, there's a reason, there's a purpose there. So from these hidden links, I know, like in the context, the emphasis is not on that aspect, but when I read it, like it reminded me that, like, maybe you don't see it, but the reason it's visiting your mind, there's a reason there. So do not occupy your mind with the content, just use it as we were discussing last week, as a means of seeking refuge. So everything being connected to each other is like portrays a reality which nothing is left alone, nothing is out of context. Even these dirty ideas or unrelated ideas that you cannot feed anywhere, even they are not out of the context. There are some hidden links, sometimes weak, but there are links, which is a beautiful way of seeing reality, I guess. Because what we usually do, or at least what is taught to us, is that this kind of stuff is like a glitch in this system. It was not supposed to be that way. It's a problem. It's something that you shouldn't have, not because you are limited or because, I don't know, the evolution was not that successful, you have such a problem. But Odo says, no, nothing is out of the context. Everything is linked to each other. So this is really beautiful. And another thing is when you were reading the verse again, I realized that in both parts he says, and I seek refuge with you. And in the original the text is also with you, like Michael. This is also really interesting, really beautiful. Like, I seek refuge, but I don't do it, by relying on my conclusions or my, let's say, solutions. I seek refuge with you. So even something is dirty that I'm trying to escape, even I think it's, harming my relationship with you, I'm still relying on you to save from it. I guess similar theme is there with when we say, we seek refuge from your hell to you. Like everything connects to him, everything goes to him, and our refuge also goes to him. So he's there like with every aspect.
So he made a comment when you said glitch in the system. He was saying that a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
Any other comments from online participants? Go ahead, Reid.
I just want to say, it is very difficult to stay focused or concentrated. Stay concentrated on a certain matter, especially when it's a serious matter, because you really have to be conscious of what you're thinking. It's very interesting when you think about it. Whereas when you're just like, joking around, I mean, how much are you conscious of like what's actually happening in reality? And it's interesting, he says sometimes the heart becomes tired and the mind occupies itself with anything it encounters in order to entertain itself. So I'm not sure exactly what the reason he did it for, but he's saying it's almost as if when this happened, it's you're prone to satanic whisperings when the heart becomes tired. I mean, I never really think about the heart becoming tired, but in a sense, when you have a sort of exhaustion about really reflection and on your experiences, you do become tired. But it's interesting, does the intellect become tired? Or is the intellect just sort of processing things, trying to make sense of things, so it tries to find something to occupy itself to think about? We always say we have mental exhaustion or we're tired of thinking, but is it really that we're tired of thinking, or is it are we tired of experiencing? Or and it's what makes you human? Because if you experience something, it evokes some sort of feeling or emotion, and you have to process that or make sense of it. So maybe that's what we really get tired of, and we don't want to really think about how we feel or what something means for us when we have an experience. So I found that interesting. It kind of goes back to, I guess, practically speaking, like when I'm in, let's say, praying, it's easier for me to not want to reflect on how I feel, but to think about things that have nothing to do with me praying. Like, okay, what am I going to eat now? What am I going to do after prayer? Where am I going to go? What work do I need to do? It's honestly ironic. I could say I probably do some of my best thinking when I'm praying, and the best organization, or I remember things. But I wonder sometimes, is that because, I'm not interested in reflecting on the experience, on the moment itself? That's what can be difficult. And maybe because it's the heart becoming tired of trying to make sense of what's happening in the world, what's happening in my sort of momentary existence.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. Go ahead.
That was interesting what Suhail said about heart and the intellect or mind. What is the word it uses? Mind occupies. So, like so we think that when we come up with ideas or make organization planning, whatever, like we're doing something serious, we're doing something big. But if we follow what Suhail said, and at least what I understand, it's like all these things are just a piece of entertainment, nothing more. Real thing is what your heart does. He said experiencing. Somebody else may say something else, but this is the real job. This is the real thing that you be occupied with, maybe. Otherwise, your mind doesn't even get tired. It's just again entertaining, processing some information. Interesting.
Any other comments? Yes, Suhail, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add on to what I said in that, when you preoccupy yourself with just sort of entertainment or trivial matters, you're still thinking about them, but you're thinking about them superficially. Because in the sense, like the intellect or your ability to reason is reasoning in and of itself can't be tiring. If you just think about reasoning in and of itself, what is tiring about reasoning in and of itself? There's nothing tiring in and of itself about reasoning. You could say what's exhausting is now I have to reason with what I feel or experience and make sense of it. For example, like somebody was telling me today, and I was at work, and there's like an old physician or doctor, and she's worked for a long time and doesn't have, people, what they say here, if you don't have a hobby outside of work, you won't give up your work. You'll die working. And the person said, oh, I've noticed over this course, she's old, over the course of the year, I think she's getting nervous about not working anymore. And she's kind of stressed out about that because she doesn't have any quote unquote hobbies or things to entertain herself with. And I asked, why do you think that is? Because he said, oh, I think she's having to come to terms with her mortality. See, like anybody, to be a doctor, you have to reason. That's easy. I could reason in my sleep, about, let's say, medicine. Nothing to do with anything, really. It's not. The difficult part, though, is now when it pertains to me and who I am as a human being. Let's say, oh, now I have to reason with my mortality. Now I have to reason with my sadness. Now I have to reason with the fact that I don't like things that are happening in the world. Now, what does that mean? That's tiring, because then you have to, now you're questioning maybe some certain worldview you have. Maybe it's undermining some sort of prejudice you have, or false perception of reality you have. Or maybe it's undermining the fact that maybe everything you did in the past was built on some sort of ill-conceived perception of the world, a lie, in a sense, built on pride or fame, things like that. That's the power of reasoning, if you are able to use the heart. But I guess what becomes tiring is the fact that now I have to question myself, and we don't want to do that.
Mohammed Said, were you going to say something?
Yes, it was mentioned already in the comments. I think partially this word sacred thing got my attention. That the way he uses in comparison with a dirty thing. So I can say that I can take this dirty thing as like kind of unsacred. And so it generalizes the whole concept here for me, that whenever I attempt to have a meaningful relationship with my experience, in order to take my feelings to their ends and to connect to a real existence, I think this moment is only possible for the human being, or for me to be aware of it, that yes, I am doing it now. I have to have the opposite. Like, so it means whenever I see myself that I am in an experience that doesn't take me to the end of my feelings, a full satisfaction, then it means that moment I am actually striving against not to be in that condition. So it becomes kind of a mirror for me to see myself, what is my intention while I'm experiencing something. If I'm not sure if it is clear.
Jazakallah khair.
So how am I going to benefit from this third aspect? So because the only examples I can come up with, like the practical examples, is the obvious ones. Nothing wrong with stating the obvious examples, but you praying and all these irrelevant, sometimes dirty ideas comes, and he says, do not be preoccupied with them. Just continue what you are doing. This is more important. And this is important, like such a suggestion, such a recommendation is important. I guess, like at least myself, like I see the benefit because this happens to me all the time. Can I expand this to my rest of the life as well? Not only during the, let's say, certain prayers, but other prayers as well. How can I extend it?
Just a little bit irrelevant, but this, even it became like a joke for whenever you intend to write your thesis. So in PhD comics, this is being mentioned a lot. Then you start cleaning up the whole house because you don't want to. I mean, there's dispersions as if, oh, I need to clean. I also need to do that. So this is another version of it, as if there's this urge to escape from things and as it might get stronger. This somehow reminded me of that.
Actually, it's not that far because there as well, like what comes to your mind is the dirty things. So that you say, okay, I should clean them.
Yeah, and as if you have the feeling that once you clean it up, then you will start comfortably working on your project. So this is why you first want to take care of the cleaning part, which goes into the tiniest detail, because as if I would like to occupy myself with it, because I don't want to take the, this is some internal urge, I don't know why, but I don't want to sit in front of writing the thesis. So I guess for that, maybe slightly related. But this can happen to when I would like to, let's say, sit reading and let's say I'm trying to understand a verse of Quran. And it's not easy, again, trying to think about a verse of Quran. It is easy to read it only, and I can read several pages of it, but thinking about it is not really easy. And after some point, even my head really starts spinning. So I start getting this feeling. And then an urge comes, something like some unrelated things start popping up in my mind. At least my hand goes to my phone and goes to, I don't know, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. So, I mean, these sort of urges come. So I guess practically this is another way that happens in our day-to-day life. So what do I do with that? Once I start doing something serious, my hand goes to Facebook. So what shall I do with that? So I guess maybe the author, as if saying that, just turn back. Don't busy yourself with it. Don't say that, oh, don't make it a big deal, as if. Go back to what you were doing. Don't strengthen this connection between the studying Quran and going into the Facebook, whatever.
Is this also somehow related to, or maybe it's too far-fetched idea, but is it somehow related to, like, whenever we try to, let's say, enjoy something beautiful, or when we try to understand something, I look at the trees and so on, I'm about to see the mercy there, but the dirt in the, like the creation comes to my mind and says, no, but the life is not that beautiful. There are all these bad things happening. Children are dying. People are not just. So there's such connections between, hidden connections between mercy and dying children, between justice, the just one, and injustice in the interaction of the people. This happens when we discuss, for instance, with people. All you say, it's something so clean, so easy to see, like you say, such a blessed day, or such a blessed creatures we are. Look at this. Like, there's food in front of us. I'm hungry and there's food in front of us. I mean, look at the peanut I'm eating. It's so delicious. And the guy immediately says, or the guy inside you immediately says, oh, but there are all these homeless people outside. They don't have food. It's not even relevant. Like, when you think, when you do not emphasize this hidden weak link, when you come to your mind, let's say, or reasoning, it's not even relevant. How, I don't know, somebody dying in another part of the city or another country is relevant to the peanut that I'm eating. I'm not saying that, we shouldn't think about it or whatever. But it doesn't change the fact that I have the peanut in my hand. It does not. That doesn't even affect. They look similar, as the author is saying. There is a proximity between them. Yes, that's true. But they shouldn't be touching or intermingling to each other.
And Suhail was suggesting a solution. He says, deactivate your Facebook account, he says. For a previous comment, yeah. But yes, this one, as you were saying, and I guess author is going to expand this in following aspects more. But yes, this one is becoming an obstacle. I am trying to understand this topic, a certain topic, then its opposite pops up and becomes an obstacle in front of me to study further what I'm trying to study. I'm trying to study mercy, then showing me, and before I understand what the amount of mercy, or I'm trying to understand the existence of mercy in the existence, then a counterexample at some point comes out and says, how about this one? Before I establish anything in here, and causing a distraction. So, and it happens a lot that I abandon everything altogether. And it happens in discussion environments, because before coming to questioning, in your example, the peanut, how did this come to being? And this is the very question that I'm trying to understand, what is being manifest in that peanut, by looking at some totally different example. Just I'm getting very much distracted. I am losing what I am trying to study. But the exact opposite now becomes strengthened in my perception. The lack of mercy somewhere to my vision. Or saying that, okay, then show me mercy in that harder example. First, let me study it in the easy example. No, you should be studying it in the harder example first, or the impossibly hard example, seemingly. First, work on it.
So, yeah, like as we discuss in this context, in this direction, it becomes obvious that these wounds that author is mentioning, they're both so prevalent, so tell me a synonym of it. Anyway, so common, and also so important. Like most of the things that we suffer in our life, all the authors giving them in the example of, let's say, certain prayers, they are also related to many problems we have, many difficulties we have in our life to transform ourselves, to better, let's say, ourselves. But these are really big obstacles in front of us.
Yes. Any other comments about this part? About the third aspect? We have many online participants. Any comments? One other aspect that's being mentioned in this third aspect, as it is in the text, is since I might be getting anxious about why this keeps going on, he's saying that mostly it is involuntary. So this part is also being established, that this connections, involuntary connections are in there. And as you were saying, we can ask the question, why are they in there? Because by them, maybe because of the contrast in them, the wisdom aspect of it. Now I am realizing the importance of what I am studying more, because now there's a contrast. But I should keep focusing on what is clean and what is sacred in the word that was being used in the text. So it should help me to understand what I'm studying better. But instead, if I keep focusing on the other part, this is what would be harmful. So don't feel like, I shouldn't be feeling like I'm going bad. I'm such a messed up person. It's not voluntary anyways, so I'm not accountable for that, since it's out of my will. Knowing that, continue to your path.
And author's emphasis about accountability or there being involuntary is really important, I guess. It's like he's not just saying, oh, don't worry, you will not be judged for them. It also defines like a very core of the reality of the human. Like you are here to make, let's say, not decisions, but to utilize your free will. Other than that, it's not your business. You're not creating anything, you're not correcting anything, you're not harming anything. You're just like an observer, you're just utilizing your free will. It comes to you, and you are responsible what you make sense of it, that's all. You didn't create any of this, including your success, including your failure.
And he made a statement about making a distinction between a disease of heart versus a disease of imagination. So he said it's let's say normal, quote unquote normal, to have this sort of an association because of the opposites being this way or that way being related to each other. When you think about white, the next thing that comes to your mind is most likely black, then blue or red, because they're opposites. So, but he says, if you strengthen this, it can become, because this is about imagination, when you think about white, black pops up in your imagination. He says it can become a disease of imagination if you strengthen the relation between two things. So, as if still, although imagination is partially involuntary, it's not totally involuntary, because you can now sit and imagine yourself in, I don't know, Miami, whatever, some holiday resort. So you can voluntarily use your imagination as well. So now he is saying, within your imagination, because Nursi is using imagination a lot in his writings. It's also, I guess, in that sense, important. There is an aspect of your free will which looks to your imagination. So you can mess it up. You can mess up your imagination as well.
Or you use it in the right way.
Or you use it in the right way. But also there's part of your imagination which is involuntary. So do not be worried about this involuntary part of it. There's a wisdom within it, why things are coming to there involuntarily, as we have been discussing. This is one thing, one aspect. But for the other aspect of it, yes, there is a voluntary aspect of your imagination. So try not to mess it up. This is what he is also teaching in here, or suggesting in here. Don't mess up your imagination. And elsewhere in his writings, we observe that he uses, actually, maybe most of his writings, wherever he makes use of these metaphors, because metaphors are the tools with which we borrow our imagination to make sense of a topic which we have no clue about. This is where our imagination takes us from one point to another point, where our reasoning is understanding a concept. So I guess this part is also important. We can take this.
One example that I remember, the author was saying, let's go to the Arabian Peninsula 2,000 years ago. And he was using his imagination there.
Yeah. Or even from the first word, he talks about two brothers, two travelers, two soldiers. So with all those, we are imagining a case which we can relate with. Then once the matter is settled and now we are familiar with the truth, he says, okay, now I'm going to tell you the truth of it. And then starts our reasoning on top of the story. So imagination is important. So how to utilize imagination? And in this case, apparently, we don't know how the imagination works. This is why we are becoming anxious, because the involuntary part of imagination makes us get worried. Am I a bad person? But yeah, there's a part of it which doesn't work voluntarily. And this is the almost last sentence of the last paragraph. Unless it is intentional. Yeah, so just as Satan and angel of inspiration being in proximity to one another around the heart, and sinners and the pious being close to one another in the same home, cause no harm, so too, if at prompting of the association of ideas, dirty imaginings come and enter among clean thoughts, they cause no harm, unless it is intentional, or by imagining them to be harmful, one is over-occupied with them. So this unintentional part. So let's go with the fourth aspect then. Suhail, would you like to read for us and share your initial thoughts afterwards?
Yeah, I can read the fourth aspect. Yeah. So this is the fourth aspect. This is a scruple arising from searching for the best form of an action. Supposing it to be fear of God, the more rigorous it becomes, the more severe the condition becomes for the person. Supposing it to be a fear of God, the more rigorous it becomes, the more severe the condition becomes for the person. It even reaches the point that while searching for even better forms of actions, he deviates into what is unlawful. Sometimes, searching for a sunnah makes him give up what is obligatory. He says, I wonder if my act was sound, and repeats it. The state continues and he falls into terrible despair. Satan takes advantage of this state of his and wounds him. There are two cures for such a wound. The first cure. Scruples like this are worthy of the Mu'tazilites. Scruples like this are worthy of the Mu'tazilites because they say actions and things for which a person is responsible are either of themselves and in regard to the hereafter good. And because of this good, they were commanded, or they are bad, and because they are bad, they were prohibited. Actions and things for which a person is responsible are either of themselves and in regard to the hereafter good, and because of this good, they were commanded, or they are bad, and because they are bad, they were prohibited. That means, from the point of view of reality and hereafter, the good and bad in things is dependent on the things themselves. The good and bad in things is dependent on the things themselves, and the divine command and prohibition follows this. According to this school of thought, the following scruple arises in every action which a person performs. I wonder if my action was performed in the good way, that in essence it is. I wonder if my action was performed in the good way, that in essence it is. While the true school, the Sunni school, says, Almighty God orders a thing. Almighty God orders a thing, then it becomes good. Almighty God orders a thing, then it becomes good. He prohibits a thing, then it becomes bad. That is goodness. Becomes existent through command, and badness through prohibition. They look to the awareness of the one who performs the action. They look to the awareness of the one who performs the action and are established according to that. And this good and bad is not in the apparent face which looks to the world, but in the face that looks to the hereafter. And this good and bad is not in the apparent face which looks to this world, but in the face that looks to the hereafter. For example, you performed the prayers or took the ablutions, and there was a cause that of itself would spoil them. You performed the prayers or took the ablutions, and there was a cause that of itself would spoil them. But you were completely unaware of it. Your prayers and ablutions, therefore, are both sound and acceptable. However, the Mu'tazilites say, in reality, it was bad and unsound. In reality, it was bad and unsound. But it may be accepted from you because you were ignorant and did not know. So you have an excuse. Therefore, according to the Sunni school, do not say about an action which is conformable with the externals of the Sharia, I wonder if it was sound. Do not have scruples about it. Say, was it accepted? Was it accepted? Do not become proud and conceited. The second cure. This is, there is no difficulty in religion. There is no difficulty in religion. Since the four schools of law are true, and since realizing a fault which leads to the seeking of forgiveness is preferable for the person afflicted with scruples, and since realizing a fault which leads to the seeking of forgiveness is preferable for the person afflicted with scruples, to seeing actions as good, which leads to pride, that is, it is better to seeing actions as good, which leads to pride, that is, it is better if such a person sees his action as faulty and seeks forgiveness. It is better if such a person sees his action as faulty and seeks forgiveness, rather than considering it to be good and falling into pride. And since it is thus, throw away your scruples and say to Satan, this state is a difficulty. It is difficult to be aware of the reality of things. It is difficult to be aware of the reality of things. It is contrary to the ease in religion expressed by there is no difficulty in religion. It is contrary to the principle religion is facility. Certainly, such an action is conformable with the true school of law. That is enough for me. And at least by admitting my inability to perform the worship in a way worthy of it, it is a means of taking refuge with divine compassion through humbly beseeching forgiveness. and to meekly supplicating that my faulty actions be accepted. That is the fourth aspect. So my initial thoughts. So this aspect is really about a scruple or an issue that you have arising from searching for the best form of an action, whatever that means. And I think that's Norsi's point, really, because like we're always after the best form of something, whatever that may be. Even in belief, the perfection of belief, the perfection of one's conclusion, the perfection of my actions, what I believe, how I see the world, how I act in this world. Do I perform the necessary obligations upon my humanity, like the physical aspects of them? So the reason for that, I guess, what he's saying is why we're at, in one sense, why we're after, maybe not as for perfection, but out of fear. Fear of doing the wrong thing. To the point that, you may go as far as trying to find the best form of action from within yourself. So you sort of deviate from the sunnah or what the prophetic practices are. Because you have some imagination of what you think the best form of action is, and so you're trying to find it from within yourself. And he sort of traces this sort of thinking as a sort of, not that the Mu'tazilites originated it, but it's a sort of like a satanic whispering, which is sort of embodied in the Mu'tazilite view of the world. And fundamentally, are actions good within themselves, or are they bad within themselves because of themselves? Or fundamentally, are actions good because divine command made them good, commanded them and therefore made them good, and prohibited them and therefore made them bad? Or in and of themselves, are they good and bad? That's the difference between what the Mu'tazilite view and a sort of, I guess, he calls it Sunni school, but really the followers of the Sunnah. He uses that word loosely. So anybody who follows the prophetic practice, prophetic way. And if that's what he calls the first cure, is seeing that your actions, what you do fundamentally, they're only good because they arise from a divine command. They're only bad because they arise from a divine prohibition. Nothing more than that. So if you're aware of that fact, then you realize what is good and what is bad. Not because the action in and of itself, like I think his broader point is to say that you are so concerned with the action that you're missing the point of why it's good and bad. Where does it proceed from? Whereas the Mu'tazilite view, it's almost dissociating or divorcing yourself from the creator, from divine command and prohibition, talking about the action itself. And that's maybe a root problem, because our concern is the action, whether my action is in the best form. But hold on, where's the creator of the universe? Where's the divine command and prohibition? And I think that's the first cure he's talking about. And really, as he says, the good and bad of it is not apparent. You can't really talk about the good and bad of something within themselves. You can't, like, where is that? You can only talk about it in a sense if it connects you to the divine source, and therefore to the face that looks to the hereafter, or which is essentially through connecting to the divine source. If you connect to the divine source, you're connected to an eternal source, and so you're really looking towards the afterlife, not to this life. That's where the good and bad of it is apparent, not in the action itself. So when we think about saying, oh, is my action the best? Well, you're concerned with the action and not what it means, what it points to. Why? What does it even mean for the action to be good to begin with? Well, because it comes from a divine command. And he gives the example of talking about the prayers and the ablutions or the wudu, and you didn't realize that your prayer was broken or your wudu was broken, completely unaware of it. But it doesn't matter, because it's not about the action per se, it's what the action points to. That's why it's sound and acceptable, even if you aren't aware, if you're completely unaware of it. Whereas the Mu'tazilite view says, no, the action is what matters, because the action in of itself has value within itself. That's why they would say it's bad and unsound, even if you weren't aware of it, because the action has value, not the connection to the divine source. So really your question shouldn't be, I wonder if my action was sound or not, or did I do the best action, but really, is it acceptable to the divine source? Or really, in a sense, was it accepted, meaning you could really rephrase it, were you able to connect to the divine source? Have sort of communication through that action. And then the second cure, he says, and I'll end here, he uses the hadith, there is no difficulty in religion. So the difficulty arises in seeing actions as good and actions as bad, and which is a source of pride. If seeing your actions in and of themselves as being good, that becomes prideful. So takes you away from divine, takes you away from seeking forgiveness, takes you away from seeing your own faultiness, nothing to do with the divine source. That's if your concern becomes the action in and of itself. Oh, I performed the prayer in the best way. I fast, in the best way. And I recite the Quran in the best way. But what does it mean at the end of the day? You take the action for its own sake, as meaning something for its own sake. That's what it means to make the religion difficult, because religion is about connecting to the source of existence, not about the action in and of itself. So as he says appropriately, as long as the action is conformable to an acceptable school of law, what more do you need to talk about? And really, if you're that concerned, it's a means to seek forgiveness and compassion and seeking acceptance, because that's what matters, not the action in and of itself. So those are my thoughts. I know I talked a lot, but I guess anybody else can go ahead.
Jazakallah khair. Very lovely.
That was beautiful. When he was reading, I felt like I'm listening an audiobook. It was obvious. So there's a message here, a social message coming. It was obvious that he read the text beforehand. Like that was not the first time he was reading. At least this is what I felt. So I hope the others as well take the opportunity next time and read it beforehand, so that their reading also will be very beautiful. Inshallah.
Yes, they.
I'm talking to everyone, not only after Ramadan. Like when I say reading, not out loud necessarily. But yes.
Abdurrahman is one of them. It was good. So while listening, I used to think that Nursi is talking about free will in the 26th word for the first time. Like the topic of qadar and free will is being discussed at that point. But now that we are studying 21st word, second chapter, in here he is talking about free will, not the qadar aspect of it, but he's talking about free will. And as if he's making an adjustment for my understanding of free will in here. Because, for example, in the third aspect, I was having up to fourth aspect. I was having a tendency with the things that he said, as if I am doomed. Out of my will, things are happening within me, and I'm responsible for that. So in the first three, he said that, no, this is not the case. You're responsible for whatever you choose, not for the things that happen within you involuntarily. But now that we come to the fourth, he shows the other extreme of it now. And in the other extreme, apparently it is something good. I am trying to make my salat much better. I am trying to be more careful with my salat. But he's saying that, you know, what's inherently laying behind this attempt of you, actually you are thinking as if things in the existence has an existence within themselves, or they have a value within themselves. Both are the same thing. I mean, having an existence within themselves. Because a thing having a value in and of itself boils down to a thing having an existence within itself, which is a eventually contradictory idea to a creator creating everything, an absolute creator creating everything. So it might sound very pious that I'm trying to perfect my salat, but he's showing the way, saying that this all boils down to saying that my salat or anything in the existence can and does exist by itself. So are you aware of the consequences of saying that this choice of mine exists independently, creating a result? So this is why he now brings up the topic of Mu'tazilite in here, because the previous three were as if Jabriya, like things happen to me out of my will, and I'm responsible for them. This part of it, he made an adjustment in there, and now in here, because apparently, and I know many people like this going through this fourth aspect, to the extent that there was a friend when an undergrad student here. So for a single prayer, I saw that this person was taking several wudu just for a single prayer. And his wudu was in a way that because of him taking wudu, school ended up putting a rug in that environment, because around the lavatory was becoming like a small lake. Because he was first washing everything like crazy. Then at the end, he was just putting his fingers under the faucet, so that without touching his hand with the other hand, he's washing each finger individually. And definitely he's doing this. When he does this with, he opens the faucet to the utmost level. So he's wasting a lot of water for sure. And this reminds me of saying, definitely it's not a sunnah even too. But he's definitely now wasting a lot of water. But the idea is, I am trying to come up with the best wudu. It looks very pious. Maybe he is intentionally from inside thinking that he's doing the best. But it was really becoming a burden. From outside, you see that this guy is just fighting with wudu. But inherently, this is what might be lying under it, without me noticing what's going on with my this zeal in taking wudu. Go ahead, Suhaib.
You know, the section reminded me of two things while you were speaking. One, the first thing, you know, you know, historically in modern day, everybody loves to criticize the Mu'tazilites. Oh, they were wrong on this, that. Okay, but how about yourself? You're no different. We all do the exact same thing. We think action in and of itself has some value. You know, oh, you know, that letter Ayn, you need to press an Ayn or Ghain. Okay, but what do the letters mean? What does the Quran mean? Like, you know, you go to any sort of mosque or sort of, you know, Muslim organization, the emphasis is on, like, let's say, for example, the fiqh of this, the fiqh of that. How do you pronounce the Quranic Arabic perfectly? Oh, okay, that's nice, but what value does it have? What does it all mean? What are you saying? What, you know? Oh, but then you can recite the Quran perfectly or correctly. Okay, that's nice, but what does it mean? No, nobody wants to address it. In that sense, we're all just Mu'tazilites. Even though everybody loves to criticize them, but everybody is one, essentially, at the end of the day. And the second thing it reminded me of is, you know, in a sense, Imam Ali was like, assassinated because of this, and from the pride aspect of it, from the people who took action in and of themselves as being good, and they thought value is in how you manifest outwardly action. There's value in that in and of itself. And Imam Ali said, no, it has nothing to do with anything. Just because you pray in the what you think is the perfect way, whatever that even means, it has nothing to do with your connection to the source of existence. In a sense, as Nursi's 100% right, it breeds pride. It breeds, in his time, anarchy, extremism. This is the root cause of these things. And Imam Ali, having been educated by the Prophet, knew that. So that's kind of it essentially, or in today's age, it breeds in this, like in the Western world, the secularization of religion or the Quran. So to just become sort of outward manifest sort of view of what the Quran says, but nothing to do with what it's actually saying, what its message is.
Regarding the same part, like good and bad being defined by the order, that when we are reading this, all the way I interact with people or my environment coming to my mind, as Suhail was saying, like Nursi here starts describing us, what we do. Like when I interact with people, I see some bad things there and directly try to correct them. Why they are bad? Because I think so. Isn't that enough? No, I say, this is a bad action. You shouldn't do that. Or I see some goodness there and I praise it. And why it's good? Because I see it's a good. There's no search or there's no question in my mind whether it is ordained by my creator or not. Because this is what makes things good and bad, right? If it is ordered, it is good. If it's not ordered, it is bad. Like this changes the morality from the foundation. I walk on the street, I see a beautiful tree. I say, this is so beautiful. Why? Look at all these details. Look at the colors. Look at the whatever. As if I will find. I mean, there is nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with loving something or finding something beautiful. But when I ask myself, like, where is the beauty there? I'm trying to find the beauty in this the geometry of that thing or the color of the thing. But Nursi says, no, it was ordered to be beautiful, and that's the reason it is beautiful. Or something is ordered to be ugly, and this is why it is ugly. Or this is why you find it ugly. If it is the details, I will cut my finger, you will see the same details there. It will be even maybe more detailed, like the creation there. It won't be beautiful. If it's colors, the colors is there too, right? Very sharp, vivid colors. You won't find it beautiful. So don't try to define things without referring to creator. Something is beautiful or something is good just because it is ordered to be good. Or just because it was ordered and it becomes good. This is so important. It's like changes my complete attitude towards people, toward other creatures. And I guess like with the prayers and all other things, the question should be in our minds like, what is the order of my creator in here? This is what I'm going to follow. And I guess this kind of understanding also save us from one extreme that we always go. Like, once I understand, let's say, the meaning of something, then I don't need to do it in this certain way anymore. Because I already find the meaning in that. So I guess this is the same thing, as if we will find the meaning, or we will find the purpose within the things, we will discover it and then use it in the way we want. Like, for instance, the simplest example, the prayer, right? Once I see the beauty in the prayer, and because beauty exists independently of the order, I can also manipulate it, just like I can manipulate other things. I can take the goodness in the prayer and say that I will, put this beauty in my sitting and thinking about the Creator. Because it exists by itself, I can manipulate it. If book exists by itself, I can manipulate it, right? The same way I can manipulate the goodness or beauty of the prayer as well. So I don't need to do these certain actions. I can do it any way I want because I have grasp of this beauty. I have grasp of this meaning. And Nursi says, you cannot take the Creator and His order out of the equation in any decision you make. The morality is defined by the divine order. Yes, Suhail?
I just actually forgot what I was going to say. If I remember, I will raise my hand again.
This is probably because we praise him a lot, Suhail. So the Creator showing us that he's also have defects, just like you.
Any comments or questions? Maybe there are questions.
Speaking of questions, maybe Dr. Rahman has some questions.
Zero question.
This is a topic, of course, a little bit of also a touchy topic because it goes into a little bit of human psychology. So it might sound like confession. But I guess here and there, if you have any question, any comment, you're more than welcome. Yes, Suhail, go ahead, please.
So God made me remember. It's while Berkan was speaking, to me that's the reason you can't. If you're discussing, what is the nature of the world? There is no reason to be discussing what you should and should not do, because for that individual, where's the creator of the universe, source of existence? If there's not even a conception of that, and that he issues commands and prohibitions, and that under his dominion is the heavens and the earth, including yourself and your qualities, and even your will is being given existence by him. If that's not even realized, what are you talking about? Prayer, fasting, don't drink, don't eat pork. Because what happens today, everybody hears this. I'm not saying anything new. The Quran God is so wise, so you shouldn't drink because there's harm in that. Hold on. One, that's a Mu'tazilite view. You're putting value in the action itself, as if the action in and of itself is good, of not drinking. Nothing to do with the source of existence. Two, you're saying because drinking in and of itself is bad, that's why the source of existence prohibited it. But hold on. Alcohol comes from him as well. It must come from him. So you're saying he makes something bad in and of itself, or he creates in and of itself evil things. So this whole reasoning of how people try to explain these things is completely backwards and unsubstantiated, has no basis. As Norsi's rightly pointing out, unless you establish belief and the necessity for the source of existence and then necessity in your own life, there's nothing else to talk about. What are you talking about? Actions and commands and prohibitions? Nothing. They have no relevance here.
Yes, Mohammed, say.
The Almighty God orders a thing, and then it becomes good. I was listening to Suhail, and this idea came to my mind. Made is that I was trying to understand it and like make it. What does it mean? Almighty God orders a thing, then it becomes good. Actually, this from the person's perspective, if I let's say like a person who's smoking and wants to quit, and but he's he wants to quit because a lot of people are talking about it's bad, and he's aware of it that it is bad. He doesn't like it. There's a sense of discomfort, and the ways he tries to learn the ways to quit it, and then try to replace it with something else because it is a habit, and you do it with the certain things and they are associated in your life, this and that. It's this versus my sense of discomfort while I am doing this. What is it? Is it that's the command of my maker, and this way of communicating with my actions, with my experiences, through my feeling, yes, and connecting to the source of that feeling and taking it his order, or as his prohibition. This is it's very nice to feel in this way.
Yes, and so we can go deeper for this fourth aspect, but let's at that level take it on the surface and take it in terms of actions. And of course, we can apply it to questioning of belief, whatever. But in terms of action, if something is good or bad, and when I say good or bad, it's not good or evil, not like that. So, but is this action good and preferable, acceptable, whatever, or not? This sort of a thing. So, in this sense, now I'm talking about the practical aspect of this fourth aspect. So, what makes, and in the original text, he uses the word amal for action here, which has a certain connotation in the religious background. So, but as of course it can apply for, I don't know, as you were saying, morality. But now author is talking about the goodness or badness of such actions as it pertains to hereafter, he says. Because hereafter meaning about its relation to the divine, not in terms of its relation in the horizontal existence that we experience. And in that sense, he makes a comment in here after saying that he prohibits a thing, then it becomes, Almighty God orders a thing, then it becomes good. He prohibits a thing, then it becomes bad. That is, goodness becomes existent through command and badness through prohibition. The sentence that I would like to emphasize is, they look to the awareness of the one who performs the action and are established according to that. So how much of it am I aware? So this aspect of it, the way I am utilizing this action, so the goodness or badness pertains to here. I guess this is an important emphasis in terms of our actions. But I'm trying to understand what Birkan was saying, because there's this other extreme that this can take me to. I mean, saying that I shouldn't be overwhelmed with the outward experience or the appearance of the action itself, because the purpose is it doesn't have an inherent beauty or goodness. The action itself doesn't have an inherent beauty. Its beauty or goodness pertains to its relation with its maker, which now reminds us of the meaning of it. Like my prayer is, the meaning of it is really what matters, not the exterior, or not really the exterior, but it's not the prayer itself, in and of itself, has a value. But what I was understanding from Birkan saying is, this can take me to the other extreme, saying that it's all about meaning, so I don't need its exterior at all. So then this is another way of, I guess, maybe ignoring something that's going on in there. So I don't know if you would like to, if I understood it correctly.
So, yes, I think you understood correctly. And what I'm saying is, I guess the second extreme also rooted in the same obsession. Because in the first part, we were first, like in one case, as Suhail was rightly saying, we giving a goodness or attributing the goodness to the action, because we think the goodness exists within the action. So the prayer is reduced to the action. That's it. In the other extreme, I guess you still finding the goodness in the thing itself. This time it's not the action, but what you understood from this action, for instance. It has another existence, right? The things as we call reasoning or meaning, let's say, or the purpose, whatever. But I'm talking about the meaning or purpose in my mind, which has an existence. And I'm putting the goodness in it. So still saying that what is good within this meaning or whatever, there is still no place for the order of the creator.
So, and when we say order of the creator, I guess it boils down to realizing me being an abd,
Yes.
because I am being needy, and he is the provider. Therefore, he is the one that sets the good or bad.
Yes.
But instead, again, now I am searching for the goodness within the meaning this time. I mean, it sounds a little bit awkward in there, but it might still be reduced to, or very much become similar to, let's say, as they would claim, philosophizing in a different flavor, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Mohammed Said, are you going to make a comment?
No, I just forgot to lower hand.
Okay. Suhail, go ahead.
I mean, this is my opinion. Others may disagree, but to me, the Jabriya perspective of the world, which, as you know, Yusuf was saying, were the first couple aspects. To me, there's a reason why Jabriya perspective is not as prevalent as the Mu'tazilite perspective, because in a sense, the Jabriya perspective takes human will out of the equation. In a sense, nothing to do with will. It's all, your thoughts, your imaginations. They just happen to be nothing to do with you now. And it's all been determined, already been predetermined, so to speak. And it causes you anxiety or pain. Whereas the Mu'tazilite view is I becomes the center. I do this, that's why it's good. I pray there because in and of itself it's good, which makes me good, becoming prideful. That's very appealing to the human ego. And that's why, to me, like I said before, everybody says Mu'tazilite theology has been discredited, but it's extremely prevalent today. Everybody says they're not, but that's what people do because it's egocentric. It concerns the I, one's self-centeredness. Nothing to do with the source of existence. Nothing to do with the hereafter, in a sense.
And I guess the other one is also appealing for, like the Jabriya perspective is appealing for some psychologies, or sometimes I do both, because I enjoy experiencing the victim psychology time to time. Because it's another way to praise myself. I mean, I experience this because I have to. Or sometimes also to save myself from responsibility, saying that, well, I did it because I was meant to do it. So it's not my responsibility. So I guess I'm finding myself playing both sides, whichever is more beneficial for my egotistical reasons. But yeah, as Suhail was saying, the other one is more encouraged more from the modern day society.
And another beautiful thing about, for instance, the Nursi is mentioning this here is, I guess he's warning us, as Suhail also saying, that these ideologies are not historical ideologies. It's very relevant to you, Birkan, as well. So you are reading this text and this ideology is relevant to you. Don't take them as historical, obsolete ideas that are not there anymore.
And at the very beginning of fourth aspect, he was saying that supposing it to be a fear of God, the more rigorous it becomes, the more severe the condition becomes for the person. So it looks very pious, or it sounds, or it feels like it's fear of God. But maybe it's not. And this is very challenging, actually, because now you need to self-question yourself, and it's not easy. Because then you might take it a little bit further and say that now I'm questioning my own feelings. I thought something as fear of God, and somebody now comes up and says that what you do as fear of God is actually reliance on yourself. So saying, which makes me question my own feelings, reliability of my feelings. It's not an easy thing to swallow, really, what he is suggesting in this fourth aspect. Because it is as if saying that you might not be very much, you might be hypocritical within yourself. This is what it boils down to, actually. Because you think like it's for your, out of fear of your God. Even you, because I have never questioned it for myself. I thought it's good. So in a sense, he's also saying that question your very sacred feelings, because this is a very sacred feeling. And it's very much like as if, and there's a narration like this, a man dies in the battle after fighting very bravely. And when Sahaba says this to the messenger in a good tone, Rasulullah just says bad things about this man. He says he was fighting for his fame, because he was trying to, after his death, he wanted to be remembered good, for instance. So I should be questioning also my motivation.
Obsession part of it, like everywhere, I guess, in our, in most of our actions in our life. But this fourth aspect is really relevant to our life. These obsessions that we say, I'm perfectionist. Right? It's like saying that I'm a bird. You know, you're not a bird. Like, and you can't be perfectionist. You're just a weak person, poor person. Like you don't have anything. What perfection are you talking about?
Why did you talk about birds? I couldn't connect that part.
No, I said like it's saying like I am bird or I'm something that I'm not.
Crocodile?
Crocodile, yeah. Doesn't matter. There's no importance in bird. Okay. Like it's saying something that you are not. Like seeing the obsession in our actions, in our decisions. And so like most of the time we do them in the name of fear of God, or in the name of, let's say, goodness. I'm warning him, I'm warning her, or I'm trying to do this because, this is the right way. And most of the time, it's just out of our obsessions.
Yes, and any questions, comments from online participants? No, we haven't heard Aslan, Feriha, Hatice Beyza, Ayşe Nur, Mustafa, Sahara. Alhamdulillah, we have many participants, but participating with their ears. Alhamdulillah. So in the second cure, he is now talking about there is no difficulty in religion. Because at the beginning he said that the condition becomes very severe for that person, as that person is searching for perfection. And the search for perfection becomes overwhelming after some point. And I remember talking to the brother that I was mentioning initially. I said that this is, because if you think about it, as Nursi is depicting it in here with the image of Satan, saying that Satan is encouraging you to take the perfect wudu, if you like. But this is part of scruples. I mean, it's beautiful that for human to understand, of course, using such a figurative language. But I was talking to that brother. Do you think that Satan is trying you to gain the best reward by telling you to take this perfect wudu? So it's just taking you to the other extreme, as if pushing you to the edge of a cliff, and eventually either you will just leave it altogether or lose your mind and fail.
Stop praying.
Yeah, either you stop praying or you lose your mind. One of them is going to happen sooner or later. So, because this is definitely out of human capacity. And I mean, even if you can bear with it, we are going to run out of water because of your water consumption, and you will not be able to take such a wudu within 2 years. So I guess this is what in the second cure he is talking about, the hardness of what you're trying to do, the perfection, because there's no limit in such a perfection. So it shouldn't become a burden, I guess. This is the bottom line. If it is becoming that much of a burden, then there's something wrong with that.
The two contrasts he gives, so beautiful. He says, realizing your mistake or realizing your weakness or incompleteness in your action, let's say, is much better than trying to see the perfection in your action.
And there's a addendum to that sentence. In such people, he says. Let me see. I'm still thinking in terms of the original text. I need to find it in here.
Is it the part for the person afflicted with the scribbles?
Oh, yeah. So the very beginning of the second cure. Since the four schools of law are true, and since realizing a fault which leads to the seeking of forgiveness is preferable for the person afflicted with scruples, to seeing actions as good, which leads to pride. So for such a psychology, and for such a person, this is preferable. I mean, to say that, well, my prayer, so he is in a sense saying that do not seek for, like, just doing bare minimum should be okay with you. If you are in such a obsession, he says, go with bare minimum. But I mean, if you are out of this psychology, you should be trying to get closer to your creator, let's say. But he says, if you are in such a mindset, first of all, it's better for you at that position, or the way I understand, go with bare minimum. Just admit that this much I can do and go with it.
So you think that otherwise it's not wrong to get something better?
Yeah, for instance, shall I be totally careless about doing it? Because this can take me to saying that, well, I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Yeah, just, I mean, wudu, it's fine to just
spray some water. I mean, it's going to be okay anyways. So this now boils down to carelessness. So, but shall I be careful in my relation with my Creator or be careless? So in here he's saying that such a person is overly careful, losing the point of what it is. But this shouldn't, for you, he says, it's better you say that whatever I can do is that much, and my purpose was to be in connection with my Creator. But I guess for the other case, so shall I be like, well, as again, it goes back to what we were discussing before. The point is really the meaning of it, so it doesn't really matter. Wudu means if you find water, do it with water, as Quran says. If you cannot find water, you can do it with earth. So yeah, I got the message. It should be something cleaning. So let me just do it with fabric. It should be fine. So now I'm losing the point, I guess, if I go in this direction.
And I guess he's touching upon this at the very beginning. He says, there is no difficulty in religion since the four schools of law are true. So he's like building upon on this truth. Mm-hmm. So the way I understand, he's saying that there are different options, there are different schools. They all are true. So there's let's say, ease in religion. You can follow any of them in any different cases, whatever, in practice. But on the background, he's also telling us that, yes, that's true. You shouldn't be obsessed, but this obsession or trying to getting rid of your obsession shouldn't also lead you out of the schools. So, like as we were discussing previously, whatever you do, and this is what I understand from, let's say, schools of law, the emphasis, I guess, there is law, or Sharia, or Sunnah, the
prophetic
practices, exactly. So prophetic practices is the foundation. Like this is what you should following, what you should try to do. And within this aim, or within these prophetic, let's say, boundaries, do not find yourself in a difficult position. If you see yourself in a difficult position, know that there is an easy position within the prophetic boundaries as well.
Yes, Suhail?
Well, I was just going to say exactly that. I mean, the perfection of an action, only comes from it relating back to divine source of existence, and therefore the prophet. So the perfection of prayer is trying to follow prayer in the way that the prophet prayed, however best way you can, in the way that you can. Because in a sense, if you, as you said, if you take the careless or, oh, it doesn't matter, where's the source of existence then? Nothing to do with your action then. So it's a fine line between saying there's value in the action and saying there's no value in the action. And in between those two things is the prophetic way. And only an no one can say to you, I'm doing it in the best way. Everybody has to be honest with themselves about, are they being sincere about trying to follow the prophetic practice, and then using that as a means to connect to one's creator. So I mean, like you said, no one's saying that there's no value in the act. The value in the action stems from connection, but no one's saying don't do it. But on the other side, you also can't say the action has value in and of itself. So there's a line between. And as you said, Nursi points out, as long as you follow a true school of law, or in other words, what makes them true is because they're trying to understand the prophetic practice as best they can, then that's enough. that, as he says, that is enough for me. Nothing more to do. So I think that's really where the conversation is.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.